Yes.
Which one?
W.A.S.P. Not till 5:30, I don't think.
Really?
Yeah, 5.
Holy cow, I could not find that meet and greet online. Where'd you find it at?
Online.
Son of a gun.
Oh, with
W.A.S.P. sold out. December the 5th, 2022. MJM here.
Go, go, go.
Right here. And one more time.
Go. Next up.
Thank you very much. Blackout burgers? Yeah.
Stay there.
Right, I'm gonna throw another one over those. Oh, easy.
Okay.
Hello.
All right, looking right here. All right. And one more time.
Cider balls.
We love you.
Like, how are you gonna do that?
Please.
How are you gonna sign those?
Christmas ornament.
It's a shirt. I figured this would be a new one for your second ball.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
course, you're insisting on both of them be signed, right?
Well, they're a pair.
They're a pair. I hate to think that
One lonely ball.
alone. No lone balls in this world.
You don't know that.
That's okay. I was kind of hoping for a matching set.
Yeah, you
Thank
love
you. Yep. And anywhere.
The last one. Yeah, we'll go through
Two for signing, then we'll do a picture.
Okay, so okay. So what's going on? Like,
We're gonna do a team photo.
Yeah.
How's it going? Nice to meet you.
Fantastic.
all right, here we go. And one more time. Cool.
Nice.
Who's this?
That one's mine.
You have a silver one?
Yeah, I could, but we've done a number of these in the black shows better. Unless you got
He's
something
got the
different.
same poster ID, just
Yeah.
in
Well,
a
there you go.
larger size.
You know, black shows way better than this.
Blackie, if I could have it just trusted. That's why I was thinking silver.
It'll show better, right?
Okay, hey, you've done the number, but thank you.
You in the first page.
I'll put that one down. Pinball machine there.
Pull tight. All right. All right.
You're gonna take a picture of it?
No, we already did. We already did that.
No. I want another one.
Turn it over to Blackie for
So I guess there's some folks that didn't show up. Well, we're gonna have to start with that. All right. So this is the fun part for me because I get to pick you guys' brains, and it's a lot better than doing it with journalists because journalists ask the same old boring questions, and you guys have had a while to think about this, so you usually come up with something pretty interesting. So I'm going to attempt to go around and we'll answer as best we can. Yes, sir.
What do you think of Colorado, man? Is altitude mess with your brain?
Nah, not till I get to about 7,000.
Yeah?
So 5,000 is fine. I mean, you know, it's like there's something about that 7,000 mark that starts to get me though.
So when you're in town, do you actually go up? Do you ever go up and see the mountains, go up the Vale, or go
The last time I was here, I drove over the Rockies, going to California, and got up to about 12,000. So you can certainly feel that. But you know, I grew up on the East Coast. You know, I'm used to snow and stuff, but you guys, the winters here, boy, those things they're interesting. Yes, sir.
I don't have anything interesting.
Well, you let me
Not really, but obviously we talk to other bands, other fellow musicians. Are there any that you keep in touch with a lot?
You know, doing what we do is a lot like when you're in high school. Everybody swears they'll stay in touch, but somehow when you go your separate ways, you don't see each other, but unless, like, mostly when we see each other is like at festivals, you know, because there'll be anywhere 20, 30 bands playing over 2 or 3 days, and a lot of times you're staying in the same hotels, and so you'll run into people then. But it's not like it was when you're first coming up, you know, because everybody, life intercedes, you know, and you get sent your separate ways, and it just kind of ends up being what it is. Yes, sir.
It's been a while that you've been back to the U.S. It's like, welcome back. And
Thank
what's
you.
taking you so long?
Promoters.
So, I mean, I saw some articles stuff to others, so that's true that they told you it couldn't happen in the U.S.
They didn't believe in it anymore. I'm going to address it tonight when I'm on stage. So
I'm excited.
You know, they just didn't think that the fan base was there anymore.
You got people from out of state and stuff coming.
Oh,
Okay, let's go see it.
I forget how many of these shows. Of the 35 we've done, over 20 have been sold out. And the ones that haven't been sold out have been just within, you know, a handful of tickets. So it's
That's awesome.
it's nothing like Sweet Revenge.
Well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So I want to know things that I'm sure are going to be in your autobiography, like who's your best friend, how many times have you been in love, what are your hobbies, your favorite fiction and nonfiction authors. Those are in your book, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will move on. As far as the fan base, your fan base is pretty rabid, and if you had a different set list, like every 6 months, you would get everybody here, because no one can agree on what's the best songs. There's just so many. So what will it take for you to come back?
Well, we're working on that right now as we speak.
Okay, so
You know, so I mean, this tour's been wildly successful. You know, so I can't go into detail about what's going to happen for next year, but let's just say it's pleasantly in the works as we speak. Very, very close to being finalized. So, you know, come probably January, February, all will be reviewed. Yes, sir.
When you guys started out and you were opening for people, who was your favorite that you opened for? Who was the coolest? And like, did you have your own fanboy moments? Some of those guys.
The people that manage Iron Maiden manage us. And so we've all been part of the same family for almost 40 years. You know, so whenever we're out with them, there was a time where we would travel on each other's buses. And I'll give you an example. We did the 86, 87 tour. They had a record, I think it was Somewhere in Time, and we had it Inside the Electric Circus. And I was on Bruce's bus one night. There's one of the songs in that record of theirs is a song called Wasted Years.
Yeah.
And there's a line that says, "Another city goes by in the night." Whenever I hear that song today, I think about the nights him and I would be up in the front lounge. We'd have the drapes open where you could see out, and we'd just be shooting a breeze, and another town would go by, and another town would go by. So whenever I hear that, it's really fond memories for me. You know. But like I said, it's family as well, because we've been under the same umbrella forever. Yes, sir.
Hi, Blackie.
Hi.
How long is your set tonight?
Hour and a half
All right.
ish, give or take.
Encore?
There will be, yes, providing you guys want it.
Absolutely.
We're crazy in Denver.
Yeah. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Yes,
I
sir.
got a two-part question. Just say T2. That's the Terminator 2.
Oh,
The first part. Yeah. And then what's your guitar rig? Nobody ever asks you what strings you play, what pickups, your amps, your.
Well, this is all geek stuff he's asking.
Exactly.
The guitar, I try to stay on the lighter side, between 8.5 and 9 pounds. You start getting up to 12 pounds, and it turns into an anaconda on you, during the course of the show. So I try to stay on the light side. I mean, what we're doing, this stage is pretty small tonight, but on a regular size stage, it's equivalent to running a basketball game all night, because we're back and forth all night. So plus I'm up and down on Elvis. I probably go up on Elvis 30 to 40 times a night, and that's equivalent to 2 steps. And it adds up when you're singing, so, anytime you've got any excess weight on you, you do not need, you try to get rid of it. But specifically about T2, what do you want to know?
How close were you to?
Pretty close. I mean, the original script was somebody that looked like me. He had long dark hair, barbarian type creature. Not what Robert Patrick ended up doing. I mean, we had just started doing the Crimson Idol, and I had just built Fort Apache, my studio, and my head was totally into making that record. And I got a call, it was on a Friday afternoon from his office, Schwarzenegger's office. And I think it was the Scream Until You Like It video he had seen. He goes, this guy'd be good, you know. And so they called up and they said, did you see the first Terminator movie? And I said, yeah. They said, did you like it? And I said, not particularly. You know, and they said, well, it made $100 million. I said, you know, I like it a lot. So they gave me the lowdown on what the script was about. Well, I had been to a couple of parties with him, you know, over the years, and I know he's first of all, he's not as tall as people think, and he's sensitive about his height.
Oh.
And I said to them, I said, does he know how tall I am? Because if there's going to be fight scenes, you know, the two of you are going to be interacting together. I says, does he know how tall I am? And the person says, no. And there's this pause on the phone, and they said, well, how tall are you? I said, I'm 6'4". And there's another pause, and they said, we'll get back to you. So the phone rings about an hour later, and they said, we don't think there's any need for you to come down. Da, 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 da. And I didn't fight for it. I mean, if my head would have been in a better space, I might have. But my head was into making that record. And I've thought about it many times because we got offered a whole bunch of movie things over the years. And most of them I don't think would have made any difference in my career. That one might have made a difference. And I don't know if it would have been for the positive or the negative. I don't know. I do know that the Idol would not have turned out like it did had I gone to do that because my head was totally in that space.
Oh, yeah.
And I've learned from past experience, when you get in a zone, if you get out of that zone, whatever you're working at, you come back, it's never the same. So, like I said, it's one of those things that it would have been kind of nice, but like I said, I wouldn't have made that record if I would have done that. But about a year after the movie came out, I ran into Robert Patrick at some function somewhere, and we were talking for a few minutes. And I says, you know, you ought to thank me. And he says, what for? I says, well, you know, I was the original. And he had seen the original script. And he turned into the RCA dog, and he looked at me, and he went like that. He goes, son of a bitch, you look just like that guy. I said, well, there's a reason why. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Nothing?
Just want to thank you for being the soundtrack to my life, for one. And my question is, on the debut album, I have a copy that has "We Are Sexual Perverts" inscribed into the dead wax at the end. What's the story behind that?
We thought it was a joke, and we didn't think anybody would notice. You know, the name is an acronym for whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah.
The best one I ever heard was "We Ain't Sure, Pal." You know, I thought that was good. You know, we wanted a name that was controversial, without really being controversial. So if you thought you knew what it meant, great. If you didn't, that was okay too. You know, the real, what made our name special was the periods. No one had ever done that before. There had been Creedence Clearwater Revival, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but none of them were acronyms. They got shortened to you know, ELP and things like that, but never with the periods. No one had done that before. There's been a bunch of bands that have done it since, but when we put the periods in, it automatically raised the question in people's heads. What does this mean? And we thought that it would probably get people pretty good, and it drove them crazy, more than we could have even imagined. And the one thing that we did not plan on was when you see the name in print, when they use the periods, if you're scanning the page, it sticks out like a sore thumb. You know, so that was another one of those, like Ringo says, nothing like a good mistake. Yes, ma'am.
I think you're messy humans, so I just kind of want to know like what your everyday life is like.
Oh, I'm boring as all get out. I'm lazy. You know, I mean, it's like, I was reading a quote by Andrew Carnegie just a couple of days ago. He says, without self-motivation, it doesn't matter how great your other talents are. You know, and I thought, how true, you know, because that really is the case. You know, you gotta have a reason to get up. You know, you gotta have something that's motivating you other than just yourself. And I tell people that kind of what we do, you don't choose it, it chooses you. And, well, his question about Terminator. Here I've got, what do I do? You know, and it's like I said, I could have fought for that. If I'd have went down there and really hammed it up, I might have got it, you know, because they were already looking for somebody like that, so it wouldn't have been a stretch. But a lot of times in Hollywood, to get a role, you got to fight for it, and sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. But my head was into making that record, you know, and that's really what I wanted to do. And it's like, I want to make this movie. Not really, you know. So like I said, it didn't break my heart. When it came out and I saw it, and I thought, ooh, that's kind of cool. That would have been good, you know. But like I said, you have to, whatever, you know, what's motivating you? You know, what turns you on? You know, what makes you do what you do? You know, and so that's, you know, Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. Yes, sir.
So we had a guitar geek question, now a bass geek question. After over 40 years of playing music, do you have a favorite make and model that has just the perfect tone, even if it's something you just play at home or in the studio and not on the stage?
You're just setting me up, aren't you?
I'm doing my best.
I just got off the phone with my lawyer, and we are seconds away from going back to DC Rich.
Okay.
So if that happens, then I think you know what the answer to that already is. So,
awesome.
Fair enough.
Thanks.
Yes?
We talked in 2001 with each other, and you said that you are working on a book about wars. What's happening with that plans?
Still doing it. I've been working on it for about 2 years now.
Okay.
But what I discovered, I wrote down initially 200 ideas. Actually, it's closer to 250 now. But there's a difference between writing an idea down and actually fleshing it out. That's a Hollywood expression for when you come up with a character, you got to flesh them out. You got to make them real. You got to put some meat on the bones. You know, you got to, like I said, you got to make it real. So what I discovered is when I got into each one of those ideas, when I started peeling the layers back, they were far more in depth than I gave credit for. Because when you start getting into your childhood, there's things you think you remember, but you kind of only really remember on the surface. And then you start talking to people you've known for a long time, and they will remind you of things you've forgotten about.
But the other thing is, W.A.S.P has published this photo book.
Say it one more time.
This photo book from W.A.S.P.
Yeah.
This book. How much work was from you?
Zero.
Zero?
I didn't even know Ross was doing it.
Because this book is unbelievably expensive. It costs £275.
Well, you're gonna have to take that up with Ross. We didn't even know. We did not even know he was doing it until it was just about to go to publish. You know, the first I heard about it was about 3 months ago.
Okay.
And I thought, well, it would have been nice if he would have told us he was doing it. You know, so I don't get caught flat-footed when somebody asks me a question about it. You know, thanks. Yes, sir.
Out of all the albums you've made, which one is your favorite?
Idol. I mean, I don't know, you know, over the years, first of all, I don't listen to my own stuff much. But I heard that record about 2 years ago. And I hear it with a different pair of ears now than I did when I first made it. Think back to where you were the first time you remember hearing a record that really changed you. You can remember where you were. You remember everything about what was going on at the time because that record moved you. If we make a record that does that to people, we never get that opportunity because we're the one making it. So we never have that moment like you have. I've had moments with other artists, you know, where I remember where I was the first time I heard the Beatles' White Album, you know, or something like that, or the first time I heard Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf. I mean, those were life-altering moments for me. But as the person who makes them now, that's stolen from me. So I don't get to hear it like you hear it. It takes a lot of time to put in between the time you make it and being able to realistically understand what it is. Because at the time it came out, because Queensryche had done Operation Mindcrime, the two records were constantly being compared. I thought Mindcrime was a better record. I really did. Till I listened to our record about 2 years ago. And I wouldn't say that it's better than Mindcrime. I say they're both equally as good. They're just apples and oranges. They're totally different. You know, but it took me that long to get away from it to be able to understand what it is. You know, because if you listen to something when it's too close, the memory of making it is still too fresh in your head. You have to put enough distance between you to almost, I mean, you'll never be able to hear it like somebody who gets to hear it for the first time. But that's probably as close as it will. Yes, ma'am.
So I wanted to start by saying thank you for all the great music that you've made. My friend and I worked together for a really long time, some slaving away in the kitchen, and 20 years together, and you have created some music that got us through some crazy times.
The way you phrased that, I was wondering whether the music was making you do the slaving.
Yeah, hey, it made the slaving worth it.
It made it bearable.
I'm just kidding.
So I'm a chef. I've been doing it a long time. So my question is, what's your favorite food? What's your go-to favorite, either favorite go-out food or your favorite comfort food?
That's a good one. First of all, I'm not one of those people that lives to eat. I eat to live. So,
I've had my food.
I mean, and it also, one of the benefits about doing what we do, we get to move around a lot, so we get to experience regional stuff. You know, if you're in New Orleans, you know what you're going to get.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's pretty authentic. You know, we were in New York a couple of weeks ago, so, you know, that's my old hometown, so, you know, I know what's good there. You know, so it just, you know, when we're in the South, we're going to go for barbecue.
So you just get all the good food anywhere you go?
Well, not always. You know, this tour has actually been a little scarce when it comes to that, but I would say for most of the time, yes. You know, so like I said, it just depends on where we are. Yes, ma'am.
Literally, thank you so much. I grew up in this theater, and all my metalhead friends and I had bratty apartments upstairs, and your music was such a thread in our lives. And it was an amazing experience for all of us, all the ups and downs. However, what is it that you enjoy as far as musically when your time is your own?
Before last probably 6 weeks before we left to start the tour, well, first of all, I don't listen to music in the house.
I wonder, because a lot of my musician friends, I have a friend that got his master's in guitar, teaches up at CSU, literally listens to NPR. He does not listen to music. So I was curious as to whether you do.
Well, I tell people, if you work in a recording studio or you live in a studio, it's kind of like being a car mechanic, and if you work on brakes all day long, the last thing you want to do is go and work on your own brakes. You know, so you just want some variety. But the last 6 weeks before we left, when I'd get in the car, I had Sirius Radio turn to the Elvis station. You know, so I listen, but I will go through phases like that, where that's all I will listen to, and then I'll move on to something else, and then that's all I'll listen to then. You know, so I guess it's called binging, you know, but that's what I do. You know, and you know, I mean, like I've been in the last probably 10 days, we were watching a thing on Motown in the bus, and the stuff that came out of that little studio is just earth-shaking. You know, so we've been listening to a lot of that kind of stuff. But you know, my mom, she was the musicologist in the house. She was from Houston. She was a Southern girl. So she grew up on country western, but by the time I came along, she was also into Elvis and Little Richard and Chuck Berry and stuff like that. So I always had that stuff, you know, country western, rock and roll, always in the house from the time I could walk. My first memory in life of anything, I was 2 years old, sitting at a breakfast table with my parents, and I heard Chuck Berry's Sweet Little 16. And that's even to this day, when I hear that song, it's like this, melancholy is not the word, it's more ethereal. It's like this thing, a funny feeling moves through the core of my being, you know, because, like I said, it's the first memory I have of anything. I mean, I was sitting in the high chair, my parents were eating powdered donuts, and I can remember specifically the scene. And I had reiterated that story to them a number of times, and they said, yeah, we were living over in such and such. They were astounded I could remember something at that age, but it was the song that triggered the memory, you know. So, like I said, I'm one of those people that I definitely found my calling in life. Music is just in me. You know, I can't imagine. It's a language unto itself. I can't imagine life without it.
Thank you for sharing that with all of us.
Anybody else? That's it? You guys were easy. We've been sitting doing these for a while.
What would be one of your embarrassing Spinal Tap moments? Do you have any good ones?
Well, there's one I've told a couple of times doing these. It was when Armored Saint, ourselves and Metallica did that first tour together in America. And we were in Indianapolis. And we were playing a VFW hall. It's about the size of this place. And this was at a time where we would flip-flop. One night we would close, another night Metallica would close, and we would just flip-flop. Well, this was one night we were closing. But we got there late. It had been a long drive the night before. And so nobody got sound checks, nobody knew where they were. When you come into a venue you don't know anything about it. It's like going into a new house, but that's way bigger, right? You don't know where anything is. Well, all the dressing rooms and everything were in the basement. The bathrooms, everything was down there. I had not been on the stage. I didn't know where anything was. Nobody else did either. So I'm in the bathroom and I'm shaving. I'm looking in the mirror. I got the razor in my throat. I hear their Metallica's intro tape start. And I'm okay, band's getting ready to go on. Behind me, the door flies open. There's Cliff Burton standing there with his bass on. And he goes, Blackie, how do you get to the stage? How do you get to the stage? And like I said, it was like a maze of tunnels, just like Spinal Tap, down through there. And I'm looking at him in the mirror and I go, and I didn't know, and I said, Cliff, I don't know. And he goes, oh, fuck you, Blackie, and he runs off. He thinks I was busting his chops. I didn't know. I hadn't been there. About 2 minutes goes by, they're already into the first song, and I hear the bass guitar come in. It took him that long to find where he was. So I would say that one because it's most realistic to what the movie is. Anybody else?
So can you tell me who your best friend is?
No.
How many times have you toured with them?
This is the second time. I'm not trying. Let me go back to her for a second. I'm not trying to be standoffish. There's something going on in my personal life right now that I can't elaborate on. And time will tell. Let's just say it's not my choosing, if you know what I mean. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I appreciate your answer. I was just curious how many times you played for them. So I saw you in 85, I've done a car over in yourself in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Cedar Rapids.
Yep, at the Veterans Arena, Veterans Auditorium, it's like between the two rivers. Pretty sweet show.
Well, it's interesting because I came across a ticket, an old ticket from the Troubadour, October 30th, 1982. It was us and Armored Saint on the same boat. And as a matter of fact, I think we posted that ticket on Facebook so you can see it. 40 years later, we're playing on the same night in Tempe, Arizona on this tour. Now, most bands don't last 4 or 5 years. So the chances of any band making it 10, 20 years, it's almost impossible. For two bands, 40 years later, to be playing on the same exact night together, how many planets have to align for that to happen? I mean, that is just, it does not happen. I've never heard of that happening, you know, so, you know, it's, like I said, it's one of those special moments. But, you know, they say if you live long enough, you see a little everything. That it? Yes?
Do you have any animals?
The band.
Are you an animal?
Yes, I am. Out where I live, you have to be an animal lover.
Yeah.
I live out in the sticks. And,
So that's a good place.
you know what, though? Where I live is mostly ranch properties and stuff. And it's like if you take a walk during the day and really stop and look at what's going on out there, you will see some unbelievably wonderful things out there. But at the same time, you can see some unbelievable acts of cruelty. They're eating each other out there every day. And they don't care, and the strong survive. I have seen some stuff that I just wanted to go in the house and get the biggest gun I got and come out and take it to one of them. You know, I've seen some really cool stuff, but that's their world. That's what happens out there. You know, I was watching TV. It was a couple years ago, and in my peripheral vision, I've got these big plate glass doors that you can see out, and in my peripheral vision I see something large walking by, and I look over and it's a full-grown adult mountain lion, and from the tip of his nose to the tip of his tail, he's about 8 feet. He's a big old boy. And so I know that they're not particularly aggressive because they don't want to fight, because they're solitary animals. If they get hurt, they know they die. So, because no one will help them, you know, when they leave the den when they're kids, you know, the parents abandon them, so they're on their own. So I just went out to see how he was going to react, and I don't know, if maybe the wall over there away from him, close enough where I could get back in if I had to, you know, because I didn't have a weapon on me. So I just went out and I stood there and I looked at him, and it was like this. We just stared at each other for 60 seconds. He never blinked. You know, and he looked at me and looked at me and looked at me, and he realized, okay, this guy's harmless. He turned his butt to me and just walked up. He didn't run. You know, he just walked. You know, so, and I was in the horse business for about 5 minutes, because out where I'm at, there's more cows and horses than there are people. You know, so I tried that for a little while, but they're a lot of work, you know, and my heart's not into, I'm a car guy, you know, so if I'm going to have horses, I'm going to have something under a hood, you know, so that's what
Yeah, kind of on the same vein, because there was always rumors, I'm from Wyoming, that you were working with bands in Casper, so there's kind of a rumor that maybe you were living in Wyoming.
A rumor that what?
You were living in Wyoming?
No, I mean, we played there a few times, but, you know, I know some guys that have moved out there for tax reasons, but, you know, I fell in love with the West. You got to remember, I'm an East Coast kid. You know, when we did the Blind in Texas video, we spent 3 days in a place called Old Tucson, an old movie ranch outside of Tucson, Arizona. And I'm part Native American, I'm part Blackfoot, but I had never identified. Growing up in New York City, you don't identify with that, right? You know, until we did that video, and I spent those 3 days there. And it reminded me of a story I would hear a few years later, Billy Crystal talking about doing the movie City Slickers, because he grew up in New York City as well. You know, and he went and he did City Slickers, and he says it was a life-changing thing for him. You know, because you get out there in those elements, and you realize there's a part of you that's untapped that you don't know existed. You know, so when I come in, and for me, the West starts about right here in Denver, from here all the way to the Pacific. And I fell in love with the culture and the scenery. You know, I mean, I'm one of those guys, if I go to the Grand Canyon, I stand there in awe like everybody else. You know, how can you not? You know, so I've often said, you know, if I died and went to heaven, I could wander the Grand Canyon for eternity. You know, it's just my heart is in the West. I mean, we were in New York the other day, and we were driving through Times Square, and I get a little homesick, you know, looking at it and stuff. But my heart isn't there anymore like it is in the West. Anybody else? Oh, yeah, sure. Some of our late attendees have just shown up. So we're going to do a couple quick photos. You guys can stay quick.